Today, we're not talking about finding yourself. We're talking about building yourself. This is what we call architectural sovereignty, the idea that you are the designer of your own identity. And we're about to hand you the blueprint, a system called the Self-Definition Debiasing Protocol. It's designed to rewrite the very code that's running your life. Okay, so everything we're about to cover really comes down to this one kind of weird paradox about our own biology. Get this. Your brain would rather be unhappy but right about who you are than successful and wrong. Just let that sink in for a second. It will literally prioritize being consistent with an old story over your actual success. It's why you can work for years to get a promotion, and the second you get it, you feel like a total fraud. Your brain is still running the old software, the old story where you're not the person who gets promotions. That right there, that's self-sabotage. And it's not a character flaw. It's a feature of your brain. And this weird brain feature leads us straight into a massive cultural lie. This whole cult of authenticity. You hear it all the time, right? Just be yourself. But what if yourself is just an outdated draft? You know, like version 1 of a script written by a person you're not anymore? What if being authentic to that old self is the very cage that's keeping you stuck? Well, today, we're putting that whole idea on trial.
Here's a core truth you need to understand. Your self-image, it isn't some high-def photo of reality. It's more like a low-resolution hallucination. Seriously. It's a story that's been pieced together from old memories, past failures, and beliefs that are long past their expiration date. And your brain doesn't really care if that story is helpful or even accurate today. All it cares about is that it stays consistent with the map it drew of you years ago, even if that map is now just leading you in circles.
You know, the cost of running on this old software is just huge. You think you're being realistic or pragmatic, but what's really happening is you're being haunted by a ghost. It's like you're trying to win a marathon, but you're doing it while carrying a past version of yourself on your back. A person who doesn't even exist anymore. That is the dead weight of an outdated identity, and trust me, it is slowing you down every single day. So, here's the roadmap for what we're going to cover. First, we'll break down the problem and figure out your cycle of sabotage. Then, we're going to build the solution, the refactoring engine. After that, we'll get into the science of why this system works, and then we'll make it real with your 7-day refactor. And finally, we'll hand you the keys so you can become the architect of your own life. Okay, let's start by really understanding the root of the problem. Section 1, your cycle of sabotage. We're going to look at this invisible wall that keeps you stuck, a state that's known as narrative capture. This is where we uncover the neurological machinery that locks you into the same self-defeating patterns year after year. So what exactly is narrative capture? Well, it's a state where your brain literally treats new success as just meaningless electrical noise because it doesn't fit the old story. You hit your revenue target, you lose the weight, you finally have a healthy relationship, and your brain doesn't actually file it as a win. Instead, it actively rejects that new data. It's like an error message pops up that says, "This does not compute with the established identity protocol. Ignore." And here's where it gets really personal. We all experience this as something I call the schema glitch. It's that sinking, all too familiar feeling, the moment you are just about to level up, and you instinctively, immediately find a way to pull yourself right back down. You have a great week at the gym, and then you just forget to go for 3 days. You save up a nice chunk of money, then you make some crazy impulse purchase that just wipes it out. Look, that's not a lack of discipline. That's the schema glitch in action. So let's connect the dots here, from the feeling to the actual mechanics. We all know the feelings, right? Imposter syndrome, that constant nagging feeling of self-sabotage, what some people call the upper limit problem. But what's really going on under the hood? This isn't a moral failing. It's a systemic neural correction. It's an identity veto that comes from a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC. Think of the ACC as your brain's bouncer. Its job is to spot conflict. And when your new, successful actions conflict with your old, familiar identity, the ACC sounds the alarm and throttles your behavior to pull you back to what it knows, back to what it considers safe. So that's the problem. It's deep, it's biological, it's automatic. But, and this is a big but, the moment you understand the system, you can start to re-engineer it. Which brings us to section 2, the refactoring engine. This isn't about positive affirmations or just trying harder. No. This is a systematic process to go from that brittle state of identity fragility to the powerful state of architectural sovereignty, literally rebuilding your identity from the ground up. This engine is built on 3 core pillars that make up our protocol. First up, the narrative audit. Second, micro-evidence injection. And third, persona anchoring. Let's unpack this toolkit and see how you can start using it, like today. All right, step 1, the narrative audit. This requires a pretty radical shift in how you think. You have to stop asking that fuzzy internal question, who am I? And instead, start asking a much more objective external question. What is the script that's currently running? You start treating your automatic thoughts not as these undeniable truths, but as lines of code that can be analyzed, debugged, and ultimately rewritten. So once you've found that faulty code, you can't just fight it with willpower. That's a losing battle. You have to overwrite it with new data. And that brings us to step 2, micro-evidence injection. You basically become a detective and you actively hunt for the 1% data points, those small, undeniable proofs that totally contradict your old bias. You were exhausted, but you went to the gym anyway? That's a data point. You felt nervous, but you spoke up in the meeting? Data point. What you're doing is strategically feeding your brain the evidence it needs to validate a new, more powerful script. Now, this brings us to the final, and honestly, the most powerful piece of the engine, persona anchoring. You have to stop trying to be you, because that old you is the source of the conflict. Instead, you adopt the role. You create a professional avatar, a version of yourself that already has the traits you need to win. Then you just ask, what would the disciplined version of me do right now? And you do that. This isn't about being fake or inauthentic. It's about being strategic. It's basically a neurohack to bypass the ACC's identity veto, while all your new evidence starts to pile up. Now, this might sound like a clever set of mind games, but it is absolutely grounded in hard neuroscience. Section 3, why this system works. See, our brain is a predictive machine. It's constantly building a model of reality and then trying to make sure reality matches its predictions. Your old identity, it's just an old prediction. This protocol works because you're systematically feeding the brain prediction errors, new data that forces it to update its model of who you are. And the results are immediate and dramatic. Studies show that when you externalize your identity, shifting from I am a procrastinator to observing the script is running a procrastination story, the conflict signal in your brain, that feeling of internal resistance, it drops by up to 40% instantly. This simple shift moves the processing from your emotional, story-based brain to your logical, problem-solving centers. You are freeing up a massive amount of mental energy. The difference this makes is just stark. The old way is a high-friction internal argument. You spend so much precious cognitive fuel, what neuroscientists call executive glucose, just fighting with yourself, trying to convince yourself you're worthy. It is exhausting. The new way creates what we call neural coherence. It's a low-friction state where all that energy is no longer wasted on an internal battle. Instead, it gets invested and focused right where it matters, on doing the work and getting the win. Look, theory is one thing, but execution is everything. So let's get to Section 4, your 7-day refactor. I want you to think of this as installing a brand new operating system for your mind. It's a clear, tactical process you can begin the moment this is over, and remember, updating the map is way more effective than just grinding harder on the wrong terrain. Here is your immediate action plan. Hour 0. The very next time you fall short of a goal, don't get frustrated. Get curious. Perform an identity audit. Hour 1. From that audit, I want you to identify 3 core assumptions, the truths your old script is built on. Then, for the next 48 hours, you're going to execute the third-person shift. This is your chance to turn theory into practice starting right now. Let's make this crystal clear. Step 1, audit the failure. But don't look for a better strategy, look for the underlying assumption that caused the failure in the first place. Step 2, execute the third-person shift. So instead of thinking, I feel resistance, you'll actually think, your name is feeling resistance because the script says this is hard. This creates objective distance. And step 3, use the avatar anchor. Define the version of you who crushes this. What would productive Sarah do right now? Then just become her. Act as she would act. This all leads to a fundamental shift in your entire approach to growth. The goal is no longer to fight the fraud. You have to stop trying to win an argument inside your own head. Your old script has home field advantage. Your new goal is much simpler. Go out into the world and create proof. The evidence you gather is what will silence the fraud, not your arguments. All right, let's bring it all together and have you step into your new role. Section 5, become the architect. This is where you go from being a passive character in a script someone else wrote for you to becoming the author, the director, and the editor of your own life story. If you remember just one thing from our time together today, let it be this: identity is a hardware problem, not a moral choice. Your self-sabotage is not a flaw in your character. It is a bug in your system. And once you see yourself as a system, you realize you have the power to debug it. This completely removes the blame and replaces it with pure, focused empowerment. So I'm going to leave you with a direct challenge for today, right now. What is one old data point, one of those limiting beliefs that's been holding you captive, that you can challenge with just one small piece of new evidence today? Identify the story that says you can't, and then go take one tiny deliberate action that proves it wrong. Because in the end, that's what this is all about. It's not about finding some mythical true self. It's about consciously and deliberately building the self you want to be. You are the architect. Edit the script, claim the life,